It'll be very quick.
That's good information.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is the issue of scope, as you'll see on the screen and as we have briefed you before, but also for members of the public. As Penny mentioned, the special legislation for the unitary plan has a unique aspect to it that does allow the hearings panel to recommend back to Council changes not strictly within the scope of submissions. The primary purpose of that is with a plan of this scale and complexity and importance, to get an integrated overall approach, you really need to have that capacity to look at things not strictly within the scope of submissions. As Penny mentioned, that is balanced in the legislation with something also very unique, the ability for any Aucklander or any New Zealander prejudiced by an out-of-scope decision of the Council, when the recommendations come back, to appeal that to the Environment Court individually or collectively.
Order, please.
Which is a unique aspect to the legislation. So two key safeguards in terms of fairness and natural justice. The panel, first of all, has to agree that the changes are fair. The panel is chaired by a judge who certainly, as all judges do, look at issues of natural justice and fairness extremely carefully. We'll hear from submitters and the Council and then make recommendations. Only if the panel agrees that the process is fair can the Council agree to out-of-scope changes in August. These are absolutely critical points, Your Worship. Absolutely critical. Housing New Zealand and others are arguing that the changes Council has mapped as out of scope, the 29,048 properties, Housing New Zealand and others are arguing that many of those properties are not out of scope at all in light of the government submission and other submissions. That will be considered by the panel, the whole issue of are these changes in or out of scope. We have taken a conservative approach to the mapping of scope. Here is the challenge in not going beyond the scope of submissions. The 4,000 submitters on zoning, and this is just one part of Auckland where we've mapped the submitters who've asked for a very specific change or the status quo on their property. If you looked at those in isolation and only stuck strictly to what was asked for in submissions, let's just assume for now that all of the changes they've asked for are sensible, good changes. Then if you stuck within the scope of submissions, you would have a pepper-potted set of planning maps with your neighbour having different planning rules to the rules that you have. That is the fundamental challenge with scope. Here is an even more complicated situation. These are all submissions in scope. If they, let's just say, for argument's sake, they were all very good, logical, sensible changes to the maps, all of those participants, if you didn't look out of scope but you accepted those changes, then you would have a pepper-potted set of maps. Looking at the Housing New Zealand argument, we've just received their evidence. Up on the screen here, just three quick examples, and then I think that's us, Your Worship. Mount Albert, you'll see the notified plan. The orange is the terrace and apartment zone. Then we have the mixed housing urban, which is 3 stories. Then the remainder is 2 stories. The proposed plan, there's an increase in the 3 stories around the Mount Albert area as proposed by Council. This is conceptually what the Housing New Zealand submission seeks around the Mount Albert area at a conceptual level.
Oh, that's good.
And hence the argument that many of the changes Council has said are not strictly in scope, they will be arguing are in scope. Similarly for Onehunga, you see Onehunga is quite interesting. There's the town centre of Onehunga here, with the main street running through here. In the notified plan, there is some terrace and apartment zoning around here, some single house more restrictive here, and some 3-storey here. Sorry, this screen is here. The town centre, the 5-storey terrace and apartment. So the Council's proposed changes in Onehunga case have actually reduced the amount of terrace and apartment zoning. Okay. And here is the key point that, again, in terms of the scope issue, which I understand members of the public were keen to hear about, this is an argument that there is scope, and also this is where Housing New Zealand and some other submitters will be arguing that the unitary plan should go in the hearings. And there's one last example, point Chev, and again, just the degree of change that Housing New Zealand and other submitters will be arguing before the hearings, regardless of the position that Council takes.
Mr.
Okay, so thank you very much, officers. Now I want you to not to move too far away, because when I open this debate, there's a couple of questions that I've got of you, but I just want to now, if we can, move straight to the submitters.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, we did have slides on the implications of the different options. Are you wanting us to do that later?
Yes, you can do that at my time.
Yep.
So, do we get questions later?
Yes, we are, Councillor George. But I wanted to give some context for the community to get a sense or an understanding of where we've been and the challenges we now face and what we will be doing going forward. Now, we have got, as I indicated, 8 community representatives or broader Auckland Group representatives. For a start, we've got Penny Bright, Lisa Prager, Flora Apulu and Alex Johnston of the Youth Advisory Panel, Scott Figgenshaw of the Community Housing Aotearoa, Richard Burton, representing 2040, Don Stock, who's chair of the Mission Bay Kauai Residents Association, Ray Means, representing Gen Zero, Marins. Sorry, Ryan. And Julie Stout and David Gibbs, representing New Zealand Institute of Architects in Urban Auckland. So, for each...
Mr Chairman, I have a query.
Yes.
Well, it's a twofold query, actually. Was there consideration given to the concert chamber? I really welcome the offer you have made to give us as much time as we need today. The precedent in the legacy Auckland City was when there was a major meeting, and it might have been water, it might have Metro Water, or it might have been Britomart. A lot of people came along, and the concert chamber was used in order to accommodate people comfortably. So my first question is that, and the second is, given the importance of the issue of heritage, I know the Character Coalition actually asked for speaking rights, and I would like to hear from them.
Look, thank you, Councillor Cross. Look, there have been many people who wanted to speak around the whole issue, and we felt that we needed to get a reasonable representation. If we just opened the whole thing up, we'd be here for days and days and days. And we have done, as you know, 4 years and 3 rounds of public consultation so far.
Totally agree.
But heritage has been
Right,
such a big part of this.
Chancellor Chris,
Totally agree.
all I'm saying is that I've ruled to enable us to get a reasonable cross-section, I'm sure we will, and then to enable us to actually have a debate and finish it before 3 o'clock tomorrow morning. So I've got those 8 various groups, and now, Penny, you know better than anyone, 5 minutes please. And councillors, a maximum of 2 questions per submitter, please. Right, Penny.
Thank you. I'm here as an anti-corruption and anti-privatisation public watchdog and a 2016 Auckland mayoral candidate. I would like to state very clearly that I support the withdrawing, the revoking of the evidence for these out-of-scope submissions. Yeah, absolutely opposed. What I'm here to do is to focus on the rule of law. What do I know about the rule of law? I'm a tradesperson. Never been to university, never had a day's formal legal training in my life. Irrespective of that, I was one of 66 New Zealanders asked to contribute to the World Justice Project 2015 Rule of Law Index, and I've had quite a lot to do with lawmakers. And so, in saying this, I'll kick it off. Please be advised that the Deputy Leader of New Zealand First, Ron Mark, is prepared to present the following petition to the House, which respectfully requests that the House conduct an urgent inquiry into the alleged failure of Auckland Council to comply with their statutory duties regarding spatial planning, particularly the requirement to involve and consult with the communities of Auckland regarding amendments to the spatial plan as outlined in the Local Government Auckland Council Act 2009. In my view, the underpinning legislation, the pivotal underpinning legislation, is the Local Government Auckland Council Act 2009, and the specific sections which are really relevant are sections 80 and sections 15. Section 80 states development, adoption and implementation of spatial plan. 1. The Auckland Council must involve central government, infrastructure providers including network utility operators, the communities of Auckland, the private sector, the rural sector and other parties as appropriate throughout the preparation and development of the spatial plan. 2. The Auckland Council must adopt the spatial plan in accordance with the special consultative procedure. 3. The Auckland Council may amend the spatial plan at any time in accordance with subsections 1 and 2. Okay, it's gone through a few name changes. Auckland Spatial Plan, Auckland Plan, but the unitary plan is the mechanism for implementing the Auckland Plan. And in my considered opinion, it is this underpinning spatial planning legislation which is pivotal, not legislation which deals with the process covered by the independent hearings panel. They can't just pick little bits that apply to them and, in my view, forget or ignore this underpinning legislation. And the other point is section 15. What is the role of this governing body? Are you useless ornaments on a shelf? What is your role? The governing body is responsible and democratically accountable for A, the decision-making of the Auckland Council in relation to any regulatory responsibility, duty or power conferred on or applying to the Council under this Act or any other enactment. And please, councillors, be reminded of the oath that you swore when you obtained public office. Remember? Quote, I declare that I will faithfully and impartially and according to the best of my skill and judgment execute and perform in the best interests of the region the powers, authorities and duties vested in or imposed upon me as members of the local authority by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987 or any other act. So let's have the rule of law, shall we? Let's have the rule of law implemented and upheld. Now you can imagine my horror when I was tipped off 2 days ago that Auckland Council is a member of the New Zealand Property Council, which is a private lobby group representing particularly commercial property developers. How on earth does that fit any concept of lawful due process? Is the council a member of any of the residents and ratepayers associations? No, it is not. So what advantage do the property developers get when they don't even have to lobby council, you know, representatives on the same lobby group? Where is the lawfulness in that?
Penny, can you wind up now, please?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
The last point that I'd like to make was this morning I attended a meeting at the independent hearing panel, and what happened was there were submissions made on behalf of the housing lobby and the Tamaki Housing Group, very important submissions which again raised issues of lawful due process and how non-special housing areas have been caught up in this process, but where is the lawfulness? So what I intend to do is to append to the minutes relevant copies of that which I have discussed, so it is available for the public to peruse.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Penny. Are there any questions of Penny, please? Councillor Cathy.
Penny, we just heard from staff that members of the public can appeal to the Environment Court if they're unhappy with the decisions in August. In your experience, how difficult is it for a member of the public to take a case to the Environment Court?
The Environment Court is not a path I have gone down myself. although I have been arrested many times, I have defended myself successfully in most cases, actually. But the concept that the council appears to have a bottomless pit of public money to use against the public and the public interest deeply concerns me. We have already seen Auckland Council lost against Occupy Auckland. I was involved in that. Auckland Council lost against the Ports of Auckland. Auckland Council have lost against me in my rates case. That's ongoing. I mean, you can get a legal opinion that says what you want to hear, or you can go for competent, impartial, professional legal advice that spells out, in my view, the underpinning legislation. And why it seems to fall upon me to point these things out is beyond me.
Okay, thank you. Councillor George.
Yeah, thank you. Penny, you talked about the governing body making the decision. Were you surprised when a group of 7 councillors and 1 member of the Independent Maori Statutory Board made the decision on the second time that this matter went before the Unitary Plan Committee on a split vote which had to be adjudicated on with the casting vote of the chairman? Were you surprised at that?
I was. I actually tried to get speaking rights at that meeting. I was not successful, but in my view, that's another reason why I think that's ultra vires, absolutely out of scope and not following the law, because to make a decision, such a momentous decision, that is just a committee of council without going through the governing body, when I believe section 15 of the Local Government Auckland Council Act's very specific on that, I just think that there's, in terms of lawful due process, that did not happen and it's not right.